welcome to this very special edition of First and Now, the official BC Lions podcast. Matt Baker and Nick Kowalski, as always. And we are thrilled to introduce our listeners to an incredible initiative we're part of called Help Starts Here, a program with the Ministry of Mental Health and Addiction. The program aims to provide crucial support and resources for mental health and addiction issues within our community, a topic that is very important and near and dear to a lot of people's hearts, no doubt. And joining us on this special roundtable episode, Honourable Jennifer Whiteside, BC's Minister of Mental Health and Addictions and MLA for New Westminster. Minister Whiteside is instrumental in spearheading various initiatives aimed at improving mental health services and support across this great province of British Columbia. We have the beloved Jamie Terrace, needs no introduction, but Jamie, of course, at the helm of the BC Lions' involvement with the government's Help Starts Here program. He has been part of many community programs aimed to help bring awareness and help to our fans, and he will tell us why the BC Lions are excited to be part of this latest program helping people who are dealing with mental health and addiction issues. And last, certainly not least, face many of you will recognize, he's a Grey Cup champion, recently a provincial high school champion coach, Vernon Panthers. He's also a best-selling author. Thank you, Coach. His book with Dan Durazio. I highly recommend this read, but Angus Reid. Angus, as a former player, of course, respected member of the alumni, continues to work in the community and has been a strong advocate for mental health. A very long-winded introduction, but certainly worthy for a worthy cause. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks, Nick.
Great to be here.
Appreciate the time. First of all, let's start with Minister Whiteside. Thank you again for joining us, and tell us a bit about the Help Starts Here program and why it is needed, especially right now at a time when a lot of people are struggling financially, socially. Just explain all of that.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nick. And it's such a pleasure to be here with all of you today. And I want to send just a huge shout out to the whole BC Lions Club, the whole BC Lions community for your incredible work supporting not just folks in sports, but really reaching out to communities, supporting youth, and really leading by example. I'm just so impressed with the work that the club does on many really important social issues, and I'm really glad that you're engaging with this one. We know that these are kind of tough times for folks. We know that mental health issues are on the rise. And certainly we continue to struggle in British Columbia, as every other province and every other state across the continent does, with the toxic drug crisis and the impact of that on communities. And so what we've done in our government is we've been working really hard since 2017 to build out access for British Columbians to connect with the care that they need. And we've been here before. We had a whole round of this in 2022. We worked with the Lions Club to spread our Stop the Stigma campaign, and really grateful for the work that you did there. And now that campaign and those efforts have grown into Help Starts Here, which is really about looking to connect people with care and support that they may need in our healthcare system, in our mental health system, so that there's somebody there on the end of the phone when they reach out.
And Jamie, from a team perspective, what inspired the BC Lions to get involved in such a meaningful initiative when it comes to the Help Starts Here program? And what kind of messages are going out for fans who, maybe for themselves or even for their loved ones, that might need extra support?
Well, thanks, Nick. Obviously, we consider ourselves BC's team, and we're very proud of what we do on the field, but even more importantly, what we do in the community. And part of our sort of pillars of our organization has always been to help build better communities across British Columbia. And so I think what inspired us to do this, we thought this as an opportunity. There was a crisis, and there still is a crisis in our province, and people are losing their lives and people are struggling. And so, how can we help? How could we reach out and help. We had a great history of working with the provincial government, just in terms of other programs that both of you have mentioned, both the minister mentioned and Matt mentioned. So we knew that we could do it, and we knew that together we could make a difference and help to connect our fans with those resources and things. So that was part of the inspiration. How can we help? How can we help make this situation better? And then your second part of your question is sort of, Nick, would you mind repeating that for me?
What kind of messages are going out from the team in order for fans that might need, help for themselves, or even their loved ones too, that might need that extra support?
Well, I think part of the Help Starts Here campaign, what a little bit of the shift is that, everyone's story is unique, and there's not just, one solution for everyone. And so I think that, there's many facets of that, in a sense that, one, it's having the courage and understanding that their help is out there, and that it's very important to make your story known, because sadly a lot of the problems have occurred because people have been silent, right? And they've had their drugs alone, with their own family didn't realize that they were taking them, right? And then they passed away. And so, part of that whole story and part of the awareness piece is, the help is out there, but the big step is that you have to ask for help. People have to be aware of your situation. And then from those that are listening to that ask, you have to have compassion and understanding, and not judge. I think that's a really big part of it, and so I think that, what we're helping to do is promote that message through the different mediums, on social, in our games, on our website, and through our players as well. So that's what we're trying to do.
Over to you, Angus, here. Always good to get another player's perspective. There's a thought, or maybe there used to be more of a thought, that football players, big, tough, macho guys, might not necessarily be an appetite for them to talk about what's going on inside their head and their feelings overall. What can you say about how much of a need and how important it is for players who are struggling to seek out and get the help that they would need?
I think it's huge. And I echo what Jamie said about the importance of making everybody realize that each of us are unique and we all have stories. And I think historically, a lot of us have fulfilled roles we think we are supposed to fulfill given the career that we're playing. So a football player is big and tough. So that means we have to be big and tough always, and I think, unfortunately, when I was growing up too, leadership or coaches or veterans just sort of also went along with it because it was the environment they were raised in. So to be anything other than big and tough at all times would show what we thought was weakness. And so you were raised in an environment where you're supposed to live up to the role of your career that's assumed. And whether that's, construction worker or whether it's white collar, there was perceived who you are. So you play that role. And I think there's a lot of mental health just around the stress of trying to be what the role is supposed to be from a public image, as opposed to, as Jamie said, each of us are unique. We're pursuing a goal within our career to win football games and to play this game or whatever your career may be. But each of us are individuals that have difficulties and struggles and viewpoints. And I think we're getting to a place in society where we're creating that space for people to be okay, letting people know, I'm not exactly what this entire stereotypical role is. I'm a person that's doing this job because I like the work. It doesn't mean you have to play this role in life. And I think that alone has been shifting what people are allowed to bring to the table, and hopefully realize that we're all individuals. We all have our strengths, our weaknesses, our fears, our concerns, our difficulties. And that's okay, because that's what makes us each individuals. And that's why we're so great. And that's a different world than we grew up in, I think. I think we grew up playing a role that we were supposed to play. And that created its own stress on top of the already stressful environment that the world presents to us.
And we're always talking about numbers on this show in terms of football, but Minister Whiteside, throwing that topic of numbers to you, when people ask you about different statistics when it comes to mental health and addiction, what are the ones that you like to share that really hit home how important of a topic this is?
On terms of statistics? Oh, sorry, Mister.
Sorry, yeah, Minister Whiteside.
That's okay, Angus. I just, we know that there's a few really important sort of key key pieces to bear in mind. One is that we know that mental health issues generally sort of present when people are younger than 25. So we know that early intervention is really, really key. And again, I think that's why the work that you're all doing is so important, because you're such role models for youth in our province. And getting that message out to youth that there's a place to go for help is really key. If we're talking about the toxic drug crisis, then the numbers are really really heartbreaking. We lost over 2,500 British Columbians to toxic drug poisoning last year. We've had the first few months of this year with lower numbers than the same time last year. But what's interesting about what Angus said about sort of stigma and roles and how we view people is that we look at at who is impacted by the toxic drug crisis. It's everybody. It's people from every walk of life. But there are groups that are particularly impacted. Indigenous people, very disproportionately impacted. More Indigenous people are likely to die at a rate that is much higher than the rate of non-Indigenous people. And also construction workers. 1 in 5 people who die from toxic drug poisoning are employed in construction or heavy equipment operating. Some of those jobs that are really tough, very hard on your body. And we know that this crisis generally is disproportionately affects men and young men from the ages of 19 to 59 are really impacted. And it's all of those things that Angus talked so eloquently about. And Angus, thank you so much for stepping up and sharing your story, because that's what people need to see. They need to see that there is hope, that there's help, and that there's a way through what they're struggling with. And the challenge for this, for when we're dealing with mental health and addictions issues, is as both Jamie and Angus have said, that there's there as many people who are struggling. That's as many sort of stories and as many issues as we have to be able to support people with. It's not a kind of a kind of a easy sort of step or an easy A to B. It's not like doing, hips and knees, right? It's so much more complex than that, because people are complex and their experiences are complex, and they're carrying all of that around with them as whole people throughout every aspect of their life.
Jamie, you played for a long time, obviously, and you still are a key contact for many members of the organization, including our outstanding alumni. In your mind, what are the main goals for the BC Lions when it comes to Help Start here? And a second part, how important is a resource like this for football players and our fans?
Well, I think main goals is the awareness piece is huge. In terms of connecting our fans with the resources that are out there through the Help Start here platform. So that, that's huge. People often feel alone. They feel like, where do I go for help? So making sure that they know that help is out there, and all they have to do is reach out and ask for the help. And I think that's the second piece, is as a goal is to encourage those that are struggling to reach out, to speak out, to talk to someone that they trust, and to open up and to share what they're going through, because that's the only way that they're going to actually be able to deal with the situation. So I think that's really key, because like Angus touched on, and the minister touched on, as men, we really struggle with that. We struggle with sharing our emotions. We struggle with opening up on important issues even with our closest friends. So I think that's a huge part of it, because again, as Minister mentioned, men are disproportionately impacted by this issue. I think it was, at last I remember, it was like 70% of the deaths were men, Minister. I don't know if that statistic is still accurate, but that's incredibly sad. And I think that we can do a whole lot better as men to support one another, and to realize that it's a sign of strength to open up, not a sign of weakness. So I think that's really important in terms of what the goals are, as far as I'm concerned. And what was the second part of that, Matt? I talked too long. And I
think you kind of touched on it, just the importance of a resource like this. I think you summed it up quite nicely, unless there was something to add. But yeah, that was a good explanation.
I guess, Angus, throwing it over to you now. You're someone who had a long professional sports career, and like Jamie said, Sometimes, you're with the team environment, you need that support with your teammates and your brotherhood. And maybe sometimes you don't get that. And there is the ups and downs of a professional career, right? So from your experiences, can you just talk about the need for support during those times, the ups and downs, and not even during your career, but even after a professional career?
For sure. I think no matter what age you get to, we're always emotionally about 5 years old. We just play adult better, right? We all have a continual fear of peer judgment. We're always scared what our peers think of us because we're always wanting to fit in. We don't want to feel less than, right? That's just a human nature emotion. And, my whole life, I look back and I had fantastic coaches and fantastic teammates, but it was a time in place where men didn't sit around and talk about anything but winning and football. And, we helped each other get better at this, and everything else was just sort of what you don't talk about. And that's just what it was. It was very difficult. And now I'm at a place where I coach high school football. So, I know Minster was talking about young men, and I deal with really young men. It's like 16, 17-year-olds. And problem is patterns get ingrained early. They learn early what they're not supposed to talk about and what will get frowned upon early. And then that leads them into life. So I recognize much more than just policy and things out there is actual modeling from a leadership perspective. So here I am, a former pro athlete, so I have credibility with young athletes. They look at me and my words have some weight to them because they think I'm cool or they want to be like me or whatever, right? So, I can coach them football, and honestly, that's very easy. What's more challenging, what we spend time on, is letting them talk about what are their fears in life? What are they worried about? And I lead the conversation so they realize, oh, you're scared of things too. You worry. And we're trying to create environments where they're comfortable not having to show perfection because that builds that mask that they have to wear, which carries a lot of weight. And so doing my best early on to change football to a sport we play, but also an environment for us to be okay, getting to know, as Jamie said, the uniqueness of each of us. And then we learn how to support each of us. And if you model that from a leadership perspective, everybody actually wants that to be okay, but we don't believe it is. And policy, I hate to say it, won't be the end of it. You need leaders to actually lead that and make it okay, because that allows that comfortable environment for each of us. And I think that we get to that place where they believe it's okay not to show perfection, that will allow actual better performance to enthrall, because that the brakes will come off fear and anxiety. It's like, okay, we're just going to bring our best every day, knowing we're not perfect and we're all struggling, but we actually really support each other. And I think that's our way forward, not lowering the bar in life, actually raising it by lowering the stigma to allow people to just go, I'm going to bring my best, knowing we all know each other, we're struggling, that's okay. Let's just be great and see what we can get done together. And I really think that's our way forward to not just hopefully improving this issue, but actually elevating humans' performance. Once we lose the anxiety, just bring your best. And we know about each other. We're just going to support each other, but you have to model it and you have to live it. You can't just ask people to open up because they won't trust. You got to model it from the top. My beliefs.
Minister
Awesome.
Whiteside. Yeah, go ahead, Jamie.
I was just going to say that's awesome, Angus, but I have one really, really important question. Have you read all of those books on that bookshelf behind you?
Almost all. I'm a reading machine. My wife just made this for me because she goes, they're in boxes, but I'm a reading machine. Yeah, I probably have almost, and some a couple times. I love to read because, as we say, meeting people, getting different perspectives, and I think it's important.
Yeah, for those listening to this podcast, it might not do it justice, but yeah, it looks like if you didn't know any better, you thought Angus was a librarian in his post-football career.
I think my wife is the librarian. She's the one that manages all my books. Yeah, I'm a book machine.
Imagine your class in elementary school being told you're going to the library and it's Angus Reid running the show. I mean, come on, that would be
Sharpie.
Talk about a brush with greatness.
I'm trying to get the teenagers on the team I coach to read. So I always invite them over to my library. I'm saying, take some books out, whatever you got to do. Yeah.
Yep. 12 to 15 books a year. That's a goal I try to live by. Minister, the Help Starts Here program, how do you see it impacting the community, and what role do partnerships like this with the BC Lions play in addressing mental health and addiction issues like the ones we're talking about here?
Yeah, well, Matt, what we really want to do is, and what we are in the midst of, is transforming our healthcare system so that we're better able to address mental health and substance use issues from a healthcare perspective. So that means providing people with quicker access to those supports that they need, whatever those supports are, whether those are counseling supports, whether it's detox, whether it's treatment, whatever it is. Often it's about ensuring that somebody has a connection to primary care. Because primary care can be a gateway to, build trust with the healthcare system, and then identify what kind of supports an individual needs, and then get them that help. And so Help Starts here is about really identifying all of the resources that are available in a particular community, and in one place to be able to access those supports, as well as to be able to see the kinds of stories of people engaging with the system, and the opportunities that are there, and the possibility of working through those challenges and getting to the other side. But our goal is that people have quick access to the care that they need in their community where they need it, and that we support them through the whole process of whatever their recovery journey looks like from beginning to end. And we know that also is very much about supporting whole communities, as you do. You're a really important community supporting this work, their families and their loved ones.
And maybe we'll go this question for both Jamie and Angus. Angus, you talked earlier about as a professional athlete, your guys' words and your actions both have weight to them just from being on that kind of high profile. But for individuals who may be struggling with mental health or addiction issues, how can they take that first step towards taking or seeking help? We'll start with you, Angus.
Well, I can't speak for, again, every individual is going to be unique, right? And so in a perfect world, you have somebody you trust. In a perfect world, there's somebody that you can say, listen, I don't know what to do. I need help. And the work I do in Be More Than a Bystander, we always tell people, listen, if somebody comes to you, you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be the one, but you can facilitate them now, supporting them, getting them to resources that do know what to do. So, hopefully you have somebody. Again, and there might be some people out there that really, really don't have anybody. And that's when I think you at some point, you're going to have to trust that reaching out to a service is the risk you have to take versus the risk of not reaching out. You're going to have to weigh your reality at some point and going, I'm at a place now where that's a risk, but what's the other risk? And the risk, unfortunately, we know this about human nature. Usually you have to get to a point where the pain is so great, it forces you to make a move. And so you're in a position where the risk of not doing something now, what's the alternative? So you take the risk. But ideally, you have someone you can trust. And that's why I speak to everybody else that is in a better state. Make sure you're a good friend to everybody you possibly can be, because you have no idea what someone's going through, but they might come to you because you've been a trusted friend. You haven't been judgmental. You haven't been condescending, or you're not someone pretending to be so perfect that they're scared to open up. So go to someone you trust. Be someone that someone can trust so they can come to you, not thinking you have to be the expert. But if there really, really is no one, that's when I think you have to realize that risk of reaching out to support is better than the risk of where you're headed without. And that's just probably the realities. And I think that's where we're at. But hopefully you have somebody that you can at least say, listen, I need some help. And that person just needs to say, I don't know what to do, but I'm going to help you find what you need.
Angus, how did you do that? You've been outspoken in past years about your gambling addiction. Was there a specific moment or where you realized you had to address it? What was that for you?
Yeah, so I went down a compulsive gambling role, which I think is addiction on various scales is pretty common amongst high achievers, because unfortunately when we're young, I think we coach better now, but back then, more was always rewarded. If you can do more is always better, right? You don't need you work more. You don't need sleep. You volume always was rewarded. So whoever can do more, and that leads to addictive personality, right? Mm-hmm. More. And so if your lens shifts from more that's productive, everything is always more, and you become good at doing more. And so you do something that isn't productive. You just are wired to do more. And honestly, as I spoke of, sometimes the pain has to get so great that there is nowhere to go but up. I ran out of rope, for lack of a better word, no pun intended. I hit bottom. There was no money left. There was no house. There was nowhere to go. There was no access to feed the compulsion anymore. So you had one more option, and I wasn't going to take that option. So the only other option now was help, because I wasn't going to feed myself. There was nothing left to fuel the compulsion anymore. I don't want other people to have to hit bottom. and again, sorry to take up time here, but I think we need to be at a place now, particularly with men, where we don't say, they'd come to us with the problem. They're probably fine. Check in with your friends. And don't check in superficially. All good? Yeah, all good. Don't we just say that when we meet people? Are you doing okay? And actually mean it and give space and say it again and say it again and say it every single day till they believe that you're actually interested in how they're doing. Because I grew up in an environment where that would show I have no control of myself, therefore I can't be trusted, therefore you get rid of people like that. So I didn't say anything till you hit bottom, and then you know the way it is, Matt. Everyone goes, why didn't you come to me? Because we didn't grow up in an environment where we felt comfortable doing that. It's not manly. It's not tough. That's, there's something wrong with you. So I think the best thing we can do as men particularly is literally check in with your buddies often and honestly and not superficially. All good? All good. Like, that's not checking in. That's saying hello. Like, literally, are you doing okay? And I need you to come to me, and I mean it. And you say it every day till they believe you. And you keep checking in, I think, because I never felt comfortable with my best friends because I thought I would be judged. Reid's falling apart. You're not going to risk that. I'm a captain. You can't risk that stuff until you hit a bottom where there was nowhere else to fall. And people should never have to go that far. They should have social networks that care enough about them to not just mind their own business because guys don't ask guys how we're doing. Like, that's nonsense. And we got to change that.
I just think that's such an important point, Angus, and it's why people who are in your roles, who are role models, who are doing this work with youth and with other folks in your environment, Help Starts Here is also a resource for you to help figure out how to have those conversations, to be able to point to use as a talking point, to use as a tool as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Angus, first of all, thank you for sharing that and for opening up, because I know that that's not always easy. And congratulations on your recovery and on the wonderful life you've built for you and your family. And I think that he handled that side really well. I feel like the other side, the person that's being asked to listen, like Angus said, do so with compassion and understanding. I think sometimes we want to jump to, I'll speak to myself. Sometimes I want to jump to solutions. I want to jump to judgment. And I think that's not the right environment to create that trust. So I feel like that's an important message for those out there that are maybe have a loved one that they care about that is struggling, that you have to come at it from a place of love and from a place of compassion in order for it to work.
Well said. While we're here for a couple more minutes, closing remarks, Minister Jamie specifically here, what do we have planned for the game this weekend against Saskatchewan? I know Minister Whiteside is going to be there. What do we have planned, and where else can people find more info on this important program?
Yeah, well, let me just say, I'm really thrilled, really looking forward to the game on Saturday. We'll have some folks along with us from Vancouver Coastal Health Authority and from the Construction Industry Rehab Plan, providing information out in the concourse and connecting with people who want some more specific information. And then I'll turn it over to Jamie for what will be sort of running inside the stadium. But really, my point for Saturday is really just to connect with people as best we can, to let them know that there's help out there for anyone if they're struggling.
Yeah, well, pregame, make sure you come by and say hello to Minister Whiteside and her friends. And they're going to be at section 209 on the concourse alongside two of our great alumni, Al Wilson and Nick Hebler. So they'll be there with the BC Sports Hall of Fame exhibit. So make sure you come by and say hello, get an autograph from those guys, get an autograph from Minister Whiteside as well, and talk about some important issues. So that's going on pregame. Obviously, we will have messaging in the game around the Help Starts Here campaign, and we'll continue to support that throughout the year. And I think at halftime as well, Minister Whiteside's also going to be on the radio with Julio and Moj. So she'll be getting interviewed by them during the halftime of our game.
Yeah.
Excellent. We thank all of you for joining. This is a very important initiative, and thank you, Angus, as well, for your willingness to open up and help send this message. And we look forward to doing this again soon.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Minister.
So much, everybody.
Thanks, Angus.
Yeah, thanks, Angus. Thanks, everybody. Really great conversation.
First and Now is the official BC Lions podcast.